Welcome to Revenge Gate. Brace yourself, because today's story from Louisville, Kentucky, is intense. That night, the heavy rain in Louisville battered against my windshield, but nothing could extinguish the fire of hope burning inside my chest. My name is Jenna Jenkins, a 32-year-old woman who had just finished another exhausting shift just to keep my family afloat. My hand instinctively brushed against the hidden pocket of my bra, where I had carefully stashed a lottery ticket worth $5 million. That thin piece of paper felt like a passport, one that would finally free my family from the crushing debt we had endured for so many years. I drove through the storm, picturing the joy I was about to bring home. I could already see the relief on my parents' faces and the excitement in my sister's eyes when she realized we would never have to panic over overdue bills or our falling-apart house ever again. But the moment I stepped onto the familiar porch, my feet froze. I heard the sharp pop of a champagne cork, followed by loud laughter spilling out from the living room. Celebration in our home with our finances drowning us? It made no sense. My heart began to pound as I leaned closer to the cold oak door, pressing my ear against it to listen. And then my world shattered. A voice I recognized instantly, my sister's, cut through the noise, cold and confident. The family already got $500,000 in compensation for the land. We don't need Jenna anymore. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't even process the betrayal before I heard my father's voice, lowered to a chilling whisper. We have to find a way to get rid of her before she finds out about the money. I stood there trembling, caught between fury and heartbreak, realizing that my own family wasn't just hiding something from me. They were planning to erase me from their lives. The lottery ticket pressed against my skin felt heavier than ever. I had come home ready to save them, and instead, I discovered they were celebrating without me. If this story grabbed your attention, please leave a like to support our work. What would you do if you caught your family betraying you like this? Let us know in the comments before we find out what happens next. Fighting back the tremor of rage spreading through every cell of my body, I took a deep breath and turned the doorknob as if I hadn't heard a thing. As soon as the heavy wooden door swung open, the celebratory atmosphere in the living room vanished instantly, like a candle blown out by the wind. The expensive bottle of champagne was hurriedly shoved behind the beige sofa, while my family immediately shifted their expressions from joy to exaggerated misery. My sister, Kendra, who had always been the spoiled princess of the household, quickly wiped the smirk off her face to look appropriately somber. It was terrifying to witness how quickly they could transform from jubilant conspirators into a pathetic family on the brink of financial ruin just to manipulate me. My father, Howard, sat slumped over the dining table with his head buried in his hands, displaying a performance of exhaustion that would have fooled anyone who hadn't heard his cold whisper moments ago. Meanwhile, my mother, Beverly, wasted no time in launching her psychological attack by waving a stack of overdue notices in the air to capture my attention. She began wailing about the electricity and water bills that were supposedly weeks behind, to create immediate pressure on me the moment I walked in. Mom looked at me with teary eyes, saying that if we didn't come up with $1,000 by tomorrow morning, the utility company would cut off our power. I walked past them with a heavy heart, knowing exactly what cruel game they were playing, but I decided to test their honesty one last time before making my move. I casually mentioned a rumor I heard at work regarding the port area being cleared for compensation to see if they would confess their good fortune or double down on their deception. I asked them directly if they had heard anything about neighbors receiving settlement offers because people were talking about a buyout. Mom immediately denied it with a straight face, claiming it was just malicious gossip, and insisted we were still on the brink of foreclosure without money for bank interest. She scolded me for listening to idle talk when I should be focusing on working harder to save the roof over our heads. Her ability to lie while looking directly into my eyes made my stomach churn with nausea because I knew the money was already sitting in their account. Kendra sat on the plush armchair, filing her nails with an indifference that made my blood boil, as she demanded I hand over my paycheck immediately. She claimed she needed cash for prescription migraine medication because her head was splitting open from the stress of our poverty and lack of food. However, the overpowering scent of designer perfume wafting off her neck told a completely different story about where the money would actually go. I knew that specific scent cost more than our monthly grocery budget, but I kept my expression neutral to avoid raising suspicion about what I knew. Kendra glared at me impatiently, asking why I was standing there staring instead of being useful to the family that raised me. Dad finally lifted his head and slid a thick manila folder across the table toward me with a sense of urgency that felt incredibly forced. He explained that I needed to sign the documents titled Property Management Authorization and Waiver of Inheritance to help him restructure the debt with the bank. He lied smoothly, saying it was just a formality to legalize the paperwork for creditors so we could keep the house for another year. In reality, I knew this was the tool he intended to use to strip me of my rights to the property before kicking me out. He pushed a pen into my hand, telling me to sign it right now so he could take it to the bank first thing in the morning. I picked up the pen but allowed my hand to shake slightly so I could feign a sudden wave of dizziness, claiming the double shift had exhausted me. I told them I needed to lie down for an hour before I could focus on reading legal documents, which annoyed them visibly. But they had no choice but to let me go. I retreated to my bedroom and locked the door securely before pulling the chair over to the ventilation grate on the ceiling. I carefully tucked the $5 million lottery ticket into the small gap under the air vent where nobody would ever think to look. Instead of turning onto the familiar route to work the next morning, I drove straight to the Louisville Urban Planning Office because I needed concrete evidence before making my next move against them. The towering municipal building stood near the riverfront, casting a long shadow over the street that felt strangely ominous given the life-altering secrets I was about to uncover inside. I approached the records counter with a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach and requested the public zoning documents regarding the residential block where my family lived. The clerk adjusted her glasses and typed the address into her computer with a rhythmic clacking that echoed loudly in the quiet room, while I held my breath, waiting for the truth to appear. She turned the monitor toward me and confirmed that our entire neighborhood was indeed designated for an urgent acquisition by a massive logistics corporation intending to expand their riverfront warehousing operations. My heart hammered against my ribs when she revealed the actual compensation package was significantly higher than the vague rumors Mom had dismissed so easily the night before. The official document stated clearly that the buyout price for our property was $500,000, which was a fortune that could change our lives forever. I felt the blood drain from my face when the clerk showed me the preliminary agreement featuring a signature I knew better than my own hand. Dad had already signed the paperwork authorizing the sale, and the system showed that a 50% deposit had been transferred to his personal account last week. They had been sitting on $250,000 while watching me work double shifts to pay for their groceries and pretending we were on the brink of foreclosure. I walked out of the government building feeling lightheaded from the sheer magnitude of their deception, and immediately dialed the customer service number for our bank to investigate further. Since my name was still on the joint account used for mortgage payments, I had every right to inquire about recent transaction history without needing their permission. The representative verified my identity, and I asked her to look for any unusual spending patterns in the last few days because I suspected unauthorized access by a family member. The silence on the other end was deafening before she listed a series of exorbitant purchases at high-end fashion boutiques that I never shopped at. The bank representative hesitated slightly before speaking up in a professional yet concerned tone. "Ma'am, I see a transaction for $5,000 at the Gucci store in the downtown mall posted yesterday. Do you want to confirm if this amount is fraudulent?" I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white and replied with a voice devoid of any warmth. "No need to contest it because I know exactly who swiped the card. Thank you for your help." It was obvious Kendra was already burning through the settlement money while they forced me to pay the electricity bill. So, I drove home late that afternoon with a cold determination settling in my chest. When I opened the door to my bedroom, I froze because the space looked like a tornado had swept through it, leaving nothing untouched. My clothes were pulled out of the drawers and scattered across the floor, while my books were thrown haphazardly onto the bed in a chaotic pile. It was painfully obvious that this was not the work of a burglar, but rather my parents frantically searching for any secret stash of money they thought I might be hiding from them. I cleaned up the mess in silence without confronting them immediately because I wanted to save my energy for the battle that was inevitably coming at dinner. The atmosphere in the dining room that evening was so thick with tension, it felt suffocating as we sat down to eat a meager meal of leftovers. Mom placed the electricity bill next to my plate with a pointed look, expecting me to take out my checkbook as usual to cover their expenses. I pushed the paper away across the table and declared calmly that I would not be paying it this month or any month moving forward. Dad slammed his heavy hand onto the table with such force that the ceramic plates jumped and rattled violently against the wood. His face turned a deep shade of crimson as he stood up and shouted, "You live under this roof, so you have to take responsibility, or do you want me to kick you out on the street right now?" I looked straight into his furious eyes without blinking and replied with a calm that seemed to terrify them more than any scream. "I have paid off every single debt for you for the last 5 years. Do you really think I owe you anything else at this point?" The room fell silent for a heartbeat before Mom switched tactics to her favorite weapon of emotional manipulation to regain control of the situation. She burst into theatrical tears, wailing about how she sacrificed her youth and health to raise me, only to be treated with such cold disrespect. She listed every meal she ever cooked and every diaper she ever changed to make me feel like an ungrateful burden who owed them my entire existence. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times, but tonight it had no effect on me because I knew the truth about the $500,000. 3 days after I discovered the truth, a storm finally descended upon our house that was far more devastating than any tempest blowing off the Ohio River. I was sitting in the living room trying to calculate the best time to reveal my hand when a piercing shriek from the second floor shattered the fragile silence of the evening. Kendra came thundering down the stairs with a performance so dramatic and overblown that it genuinely deserved an award for terrible acting. She was clutching her chest and hyperventilating as she accused me of sneaking into her bedroom while she was in the shower to steal her prized possession. She claimed I had taken her gold, diamond-encrusted necklace, which was a ridiculous accusation because I knew for a fact she had pawned it days ago to fund her secret shopping spree. Kendra stormed into the living room and pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly in my face while screaming at the top of her lungs to make sure the neighbors heard. She glared at me with fake tears streaming down her face and yelled, "It was you! I saw you lurking in front of my room earlier today. Give me back my necklace right now, you filthy thief!" I looked up from my book with a calmness that infuriated her and let a small smirk of amusement play on my lips before responding. I looked her dead in the eye and said with dripping sarcasm, "You sold that necklace to buy your new designer handbag, didn't you? Kendra, stop acting because you are terrible at it." Howard and Beverly didn't even pause to consider the logic of my statement or ask for a shred of proof before jumping to defend their precious golden child. They immediately assumed the role of long-suffering parents who were heartbroken to discover they had raised a criminal under their own roof. It was sickening to witness how seamlessly they coordinated this attack, as if they had rehearsed the entire scene in front of a mirror to ensure maximum impact. Mom clutched her pearls and looked at me with an expression of profound disappointment while muttering about how she had failed as a mother to raise such a dishonest daughter. Dad slammed the document titled Waiver of Residence and Inheritance onto the coffee table with a force that made the wood groan under his fist. He looked at me with cold eyes and delivered the ultimatum they had clearly been planning since the moment the settlement money hit their account. He told me I had 2 choices, which were to sign the paper and leave immediately, or he would call the police to have me arrested for grand larceny. He claimed he didn't want to see his own daughter in handcuffs, but he would do what was necessary to protect the integrity of this family. A cold realization washed over me as I looked at the paper, because this was exactly the method to get rid of me that he had whispered about that night. They had manufactured a crime to force me out of the house so they could keep the entire $500,000 without sharing a cent. It was a perfect trap designed to strip me of my dignity and my home in one fell swoop, leaving me with nothing but the clothes on my back. They expected me to beg for forgiveness or plead for mercy, but they had severely underestimated the person standing in front of them. I picked up the pen with a steady hand and looked at them with pity instead of the fear they expected to see in my eyes. I signed my name across the bottom of the page, knowing that this worthless scrap of paper meant nothing compared to the $5 million lottery ticket sitting safely in my pocket. The silence in the room was deafening as the sound of the pen scratching against the paper sealed my departure from this toxic environment forever. I stood up slowly and walked toward the door where I had already hidden my suitcase earlier that day in anticipation of this very moment. Before I stepped out into the night, I turned around to look at the three people who were supposed to be my family one last time. I met their smug gazes with a look of absolute confidence and said, "You people want me to leave, that is fine, but do not regret it when you realize you just kicked out the most valuable thing in this entire house." I didn't wait for their response as I turned around and walked out into the dark Louisville night without looking back at the crumbling house that was no longer my home. The rain had stopped, but the air was crisp and clean as I hailed a taxi to take me away from that nightmare. I settled into the leather seat of the cab and told the driver to take me straight to the most luxurious 5-star hotel in the downtown district because my life as a millionaire was about to begin. 1 week after I left, instead of feeling guilty or worried, my family began a dirty media campaign designed to destroy my reputation completely in the eyes of our community. Kendra took to Facebook and Instagram with a vengeance, posting long diatribes that painted a horrific and false picture of my character to anyone who would listen. She fabricated a detailed story claiming that I was an ungrateful daughter who had fallen into a spiraling drug addiction and stolen our elderly parents' retirement savings before running off with a secret boyfriend. The notification bubbles on my phone exploded with messages from mutual acquaintances, asking for explanations, or simply blocking me based on her lies. But I refused to engage with the drama publicly. I knew that trying to defend myself in the comment section would only fuel their fire. So I chose to remain completely silent while I prepared my counterattack in the shadows. While they were busy destroying my past, I was busy securing my future by visiting the lottery headquarters to claim my $5 million prize. I opted for the anonymous claim option to keep my name out of the local news for now because I needed the element of surprise on my side. The reality of the situation hit me with overwhelming force when the funds were wire transferred and I saw that astronomical number sitting in my new bank account. Seeing those zeros gave me a sense of security and power that completely erased the sting of their betrayal and allowed me to think clearly for the first time in years. With financial freedom firmly in my grasp, I immediately signed a lease for a luxurious penthouse apartment that offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the majestic Ohio River. I spent my days replacing my meager wardrobe with high-end designer clothes and experiencing the lifestyle I had been denied while supporting my ungrateful family. However, simply living well in private was not enough because I needed to execute a plan that would expose their treachery to the world in the most humiliating way possible. I sat on my velvet sofa watching the boats drift by on the river below and realized that the best revenge would be to use their own greed and vanity against them. I reached out to my best friend Chloe, who worked as a high-profile event planner in the city, and invited her over to my new sanctuary to reveal the truth. I told her everything about the lottery win, the hidden settlement money, and the cruel way my parents and sister had kicked me out to keep their wealth to themselves. Chloe listened with her jaw on the floor before I unlocked my phone and showed her the banking app to prove that I was serious about my resources. The shock on her face was priceless as she realized that the friend she thought was homeless was actually a multimillionaire. Chloe looked at the screen with wide eyes and gasped. "Good heavens, Jenna, what exactly are you planning to do with all of this money? Please do not tell me you are going to forgive them." I took a slow sip of vintage red wine and smiled mysteriously. "Forgive them? Absolutely not, Chloe. I am going to show them exactly what they threw away. I want to organize the biggest party this city has ever seen." We spent the rest of the evening crafting the perfect strategy to ruin Kendra's social standing by targeting the one thing she cared about most, which was her popularity. Chloe used her professional network to design and send out exclusive electronic invitations to every single relative and friend we knew, including Kendra's entire circle of superficial followers. The invitation promised an all-expenses-paid luxury yacht party on the river, with free champagne and gourmet food scheduled exactly on the night of Kendra's birthday. We made sure the digital invite looked incredibly exclusive and sophisticated to appeal to the vanity of the people Kendra desperately tried to impress. The allure of a free, high-class event was too strong for the shallow people Kendra surrounded herself with to resist, even for the sake of loyalty. My phone buzzed incessantly with RSVP notifications, confirming that everyone from my cousins to Kendra's best friends had accepted the invitation without a second thought. They were all too eager to experience a taste of the good life to care about the sister who had been left behind in a crumbling house. It was pathetic to see how easily their loyalty could be bought with the promise of free alcohol and a boat ride. I scrolled through the list of confirmed guests with satisfaction, knowing that Kendra would be sitting alone on her birthday while everyone she knew celebrated with the sister she tried to destroy. On the last Saturday of the month, the Louisville harbor was ablaze with lights and bustling more than ever as all attention focused on the magnificent yacht docked there. I had spared no expense to rent the most luxurious river yacht available in Kentucky and transformed it into a floating palace that shimmered against the dark waters of the Ohio River. Thousands of fresh white roses imported from South America adorned every railing and surface, while elaborate crystal chandeliers suspended from the open-air deck cast a magical glow over the water. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfume and the soft melody of a live jazz band playing in the background as guests boarded the vessel in awe of the spectacle I had created. I stepped onto the upper deck wearing a breathtaking midnight blue evening gown encrusted with real diamonds that caught the light with every movement I made. I walked with a newfound confidence through the sea of hundreds of guests who were raising their champagne glasses in my honor, which was a stark contrast to the girl in the ragged uniform they used to ignore. Every person who had once looked down on me or believed Kendra's lies was now vying for my attention, hoping to get a glimpse of the woman who had pulled off the event of the year. I smiled graciously at them while enjoying the heavy weight of the expensive jewelry around my neck, which served as armor against the memories of my poverty. Meanwhile, across town, in the suffocating silence of our dilapidated house, Kendra sat alone at the dining table, wearing heavy makeup that looked grotesque under the harsh kitchen light. She stared blankly at a cheap grocery store cake with unlit candles while checking her phone every few seconds, only to receive a barrage of fake apology texts from people claiming to be sick or busy. It must have been agonizing for her to realize that the loyalty of her social circle was as fragile as her ego when faced with a better offer. She sat there in her sequined dress, waiting for a party that would never happen, while the silence of the empty house mocked her delusions of grandeur. As the clock struck the prime hour for social engagement, I signaled the production crew to begin the live stream on the massive LED screens positioned around the yacht and simultaneously broadcast it to every social media platform. I instructed the camera operators to zoom in specifically on Kendra's loyal inner circle, who were currently dancing enthusiastically on the dance floor and laughing without a care in the world. The camera panned across the faces of people Kendra had known since high school, showing them popping bottles of vintage champagne and devouring caviar as if they had never known her. I took the microphone from the stand and addressed the camera with a radiant smile, knowing that my sister was watching this exact moment from her lonely purgatory. I raised my crystal flute high in the air and shouted over the thumping music to ensure my voice carried clearly to the other side of the screen. Thank you, everyone, for coming to celebrate my new freedom. Drink to your heart's content tonight because I'm paying. The response was immediate and deafening as the crowd erupted into cheers that echoed across the water and into the night sky. They raised their glasses toward me and chanted in unison with a fervor that must have felt like a knife twisting in Kendra's gut. Long live Jenna, best party in Louisville. Back in the living room, Kendra watched the screen in horror as the people she considered her best friends betrayed her for a taste of the luxury she had always felt entitled to. She went completely berserk and started smashing plates and sweeping the cheap decorations off the table while screaming until her throat was raw at the unfairness of it all. She paced around the room like a caged animal, unable to comprehend how the sister she had discarded was now the queen of the city. My phone began to vibrate violently in my clutch, and when I saw Kendra's name flashing on the screen, I knew the bait had been taken perfectly. I motioned for the DJ to cut the music and connected my phone via Bluetooth to the yacht's massive sound system so every single guest could hear the conversation clearly. I tapped the green button and put on a confused expression as her shrill voice blasted through the speakers for hundreds of people to hear. Kendra did not realize she was on speaker as she screamed with a mixture of pure envy and unbridled rage that silenced the entire deck. "What are you doing, Jenna? How dare you steal my guests? Where did you get the money? Come home right now!" The entire boat fell silent as they listened to the pathetic desperation in her voice, which sounded even uglier against the backdrop of such elegance. I waited a beat for the humiliation to sink in before replying with a calm demeanor that devastated her more than any shout could. I smiled at the camera lens and said smoothly into the microphone, "Oh, Kendra, what are you saying? Didn't you say you didn't need me anymore? Happy lonely birthday." I tapped the red button to end the call, and the crowd instantly erupted into raucous laughter and applause that surely resonated all the way back to the house where my sister sat in the ruins of her ego. As soon as the live stream ended and the city's attention was at its peak, Chloe helped me execute the final blow that would shatter their reputation forever. We capitalized on the massive wave of curiosity generated by the extravagant yacht party to redirect the public's gaze toward the dark reality hidden behind my family's facade. Chloe sat next to me with her laptop open and uploaded a comprehensive digital dossier we had meticulously compiled titled "The Truth Behind the Jenkins Family" to every major community forum and neighborhood group in Louisville. This was not merely a rant or an emotional plea for sympathy, but rather a forensic presentation of facts designed to dismantle their lies piece by piece. The post opened with high-resolution scans of the legal documents Dad had signed, acknowledging the receipt of $500,000 in compensation, which proved he had the money long before he tried to evict me. Right below those documents, we attached the credit card statements showing Kendra's exorbitant spending on designer handbags and shoes during the exact same week they were crying poverty to me. The visual contrast between their secret wealth and their performance of destitution was undeniable and painted a damning picture of their greed. However, the most devastating piece of evidence was the audio file embedded at the very bottom of the post, which we labeled the family meeting. Chloe and I watched in silence as the view count on the post skyrocketed within minutes because people were desperate to understand the drama unfolding before them. We had uploaded the crystal-clear recording of that fateful night where the voices of my family members revealed their true nature without any filter. Dad's cold whisper saying, "We have to find a way to get rid of her," followed by Kendra's dismissive declaration that we don't need Jenna anymore, played on thousands of devices across the city. It was the undeniable smoking gun that stripped away any possibility of them claiming this was a misunderstanding or a family dispute blown out of proportion. The reaction from the online community was instantaneous and ferocious as the public sentiment shifted from curiosity to absolute collective outrage against the Jenkins family. The comment section exploded with thousands of angry messages from neighbors and strangers alike who were horrified by the cruelty displayed in the recording. They flooded Kendra's social media pages with hateful comments calling out her hypocrisy and attacking my parents for being complicit in such a heartless scheme. I scrolled through the endless stream of vitriol, feeling a strange sense of detachment as I read the words of strangers defending my honor. I paused when I saw a particularly incisive comment that had already gathered thousands of likes and read it aloud to Chloe. "Oh my God, how can such scary parents and sister exist? Did they really sell out their own child for $500,000? Boycott them immediately." Chloe tapped my shoulder excitedly and pointed at her screen where her email inbox was filling up with notifications from the companies Kendra worked with. The brands that had previously sponsored Kendra's influencer lifestyle were scrambling to distance themselves from the PR disaster that was consuming her image. Chloe turned the laptop toward me with a triumphant grin and said, "Look at this, Jenna. The brands are canceling their advertising contracts with Kendra right now. She is completely done. The fallout for Kendra was immediate and catastrophic as she watched her entire digital empire crumble into dust within the span of a single hour. Every small business and local brand she had partnered with issued public statements severing ties with her to avoid being associated with a woman who scammed her own sister. Her friends, who were currently partying on my yacht, blocked her number to avoid the crossfire, leaving her completely isolated in the digital world she used to rule. She had no choice but to deactivate her accounts and lock herself in her room as the virtual mob tore apart what was left of her persona. The consequences for my parents were equally severe as the scandal spilled over from the internet into the real world of our quiet neighborhood. The neighbors who had once listened to Mom's sob stories now looked at them with open disgust and crossed the street to avoid walking near our house. When Dad tried to go to the grocery store, he was met with whispers and fingers pointing at him as the man who sold his daughter for a check. The pressure of public shaming and the realization that their reputation was destroyed caused the internal structure of the family to collapse. They began fighting amongst themselves, with Dad blaming Mom for not being careful enough and Kendra screaming at both of them for ruining her future. They were trapped in that house together with their dwindling money and their resentment while the city of Louisville watched them fall apart. 6 months after that fateful party, as the golden autumn leaves began to cover the streets of Louisville, the decaying past came knocking at my door again. The Jenkins family had spiraled into complete financial ruin faster than anyone could have anticipated due to a combination of stupidity and arrogance. They had burned through the settlement money at a breakneck pace by purchasing luxury cars to maintain appearances and making disastrous investments in shady business schemes that promised quick returns. To make matters worse, the tax authorities had launched a full investigation into their finances after discovering they had fraudulently underreported the compensation money to avoid paying their fair share. The resulting fines and legal fees had drained every last cent they had left, leaving them with absolutely nothing but the clothes on their backs and a mountain of debt. They somehow managed to track down the address of the high-security apartment complex where I lived and gathered at the front gate, looking like ghosts of their former selves. I watched the security feed from inside my penthouse and saw 3 haggard figures standing nervously by the intercom who looked nothing like the arrogant people who had kicked me out. Dad looked decades older with stooped shoulders and gray skin, while Mom appeared frail and terrified as she clutched her handbag with trembling hands. They looked so pathetic and small against the imposing steel gates of my building that it was almost difficult to believe these were the same people who had once held so much power over me. I watched them press the buzzer repeatedly until I finally activated the video screen to hear what they had to say for themselves after all this time. Dad and Mom immediately pressed their faces close to the camera lens, with tears streaming down their cheeks as they realized I was listening. They began begging for forgiveness with a desperation that was painful to witness because it was born entirely out of necessity rather than genuine remorse. Beverly's voice cracked through the speaker as she pleaded, "Jenna, please listen to me because I know we were wrong. Open the door for your parents so we can talk properly. We are a family and you cannot just abandon your mother and father like this." Howard leaned in next to her and added with a weak and trembling voice that lacked any of his former authority, "I am so sorry, daughter. Please just save our family this one last time, and we promise never to ask for anything again." I shifted my gaze to the figure standing silently behind them and saw Kendra looking down at her scuffed shoes without daring to lift her head. The arrogant sister, who used to demand my paycheck and mock my clothes, was gone, replaced by a defeated woman who had lost everything, including her pride. She looked miserable and broken in a cheap coat that was too thin for the autumn chill, serving as a living reminder of where greed leads. Seeing them in this state did not bring me the rush of joy I thought it would, but neither did it bring me any sadness. I looked at them one last time through the digital screen and felt a profound sense of lightness, as if the last shackle binding me to them had finally snapped. I pressed the talk button and spoke with a calmness that signaled the absolute end of our relationship. I enunciated every word clearly to ensure they understood that this was not a negotiation, but a final verdict on their actions. I looked directly into the camera lens and said, "You people sold me for $500,000. The transaction ended on the night you kicked me out. Do not ever come back here again." I switched off the monitor without waiting for their reaction and immediately picked up the phone to call the building's security desk. I requested that the guards remove the 3 individuals loitering at the gate for harassment and disturbing the peace. I did not stay to watch them being escorted away because they were no longer part of my story. I walked out onto the spacious balcony where the cool wind off the Ohio River brushed against my face, carrying the scent of fall. I sat down in the plush armchair and lifted a steaming cup of coffee to my lips to take a slow, deliberate sip. The dark roast tasted bitter, yet wonderfully sweet as it warmed my chest and grounded me in the present moment. I smiled as I watched the river flowing steadily below me, realizing that I was finally the captain of my own destiny. Jenna's story concludes here, but it leaves us with a profound lesson about the true value of family and self-respect. We often grow up believing that sharing the same bloodline automatically creates a bond that must be preserved at all costs. But this story proves that is not always true. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the very ones draining your energy and exploiting your kindness for their own gain. The biggest takeaway from Jenna's journey is the courage it takes to cut off toxic relationships, even when those people are your parents or siblings. Filial piety should never mean allowing yourself to be trampled on or abused by those who are supposed to protect you. Greed can easily blind people to the love they should have for one another, but your own integrity and resilience will always be your strongest shield. When you learn to love and value yourself enough to say no, life will eventually reward you with the peace and success you deserve. Do not wait for someone else to save you because you are the only one capable of steering your own life. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Jenna's emotional journey to find justice and freedom. We truly appreciate your support and hope this story resonated with you. What do you think about Jenna's decision to call security at the end? Was she too harsh on her parents, or was it the exact price they deserved to pay for their betrayal? Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below because we love hearing from you. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on our next dramatic story. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next one.